take a breath. Sit down. Because what you are about to hear is not from a movie. Nobody wrote this in a screenplay. Nobody dreamed this up. Every single word of this is real. It is happening right now, and it is shaking one of the most powerful royal families in the world to its absolute core. We are talking about an arrest. The arrest of a man who was born into a palace. A man whose mother wore the crown of Great Britain for 70 years. A man who grew up in castles, who had butlers and protection officers following him everywhere, who attended state banquets and shook hands with presidents and prime ministers, who lived, for his entire life, inside a golden bubble where the rules that apply to every single one of us simply did not apply to him. A man who, for decades, millions of people assumed would never, not in this lifetime, not ever, face any real consequences for anything. And while that earthquake is still ripping through the marble hallways of Buckingham Palace, there is a second storm brewing. Thousands of miles away in California, Harry and Meghan have walked straight into a vicious new war, a war of words, accusations, and explosive claims that is threatening to pull back the curtain on the royal family, in ways that even their worst critics could not have predicted. So let us go through all of it. Every detail, nothing left out, because this story deserves to be told properly. It was February 19th, 2026, a Thursday morning, cold in Norfolk, England. The kind of gray, quiet morning where nothing feels like it should be happening. And then, police vehicles appeared on the road leading to the Sandringham estate. Not one car, multiple vehicles, officers, detectives, and they drove to Wood Farm, a property on that royal estate, and they arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the man the world knew as Prince Andrew, the son of the late Queen Elizabeth II, the brother of a sitting king, 66 years old, arrested on his birthday. Let that fully land, because this was not a routine stop. This was not a misunderstanding. Thames Valley Police confirmed they had detained a man in his 60s on suspicion of misconduct in public office. They did not say his name. British law does not require it, but the entire world already knew exactly who they were talking about. He was put in a police car, driven to Aylsham Police Station, roughly 50 miles from the estate, and he sat in that building being questioned by detectives for 11 hours. 11 hours. No servants, no palace press secretary, no royal protocol. Just a man in an interview room, answering questions from officers who did not care one bit about his bloodline or his birthday. And when it was over, he was released. Not charged, not cleared, but released under investigation. He walked out of that police station, got into a car, and was driven away without saying a single word to the cameras waiting outside. Now, the thing you need to understand is that this arrest did not come from nowhere. It came from documents, millions of them. When American authorities released over 3 million pages of files related to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, investigators across the world started going through them. And what they found, buried in emails, was a pattern that nobody could explain away. Andrew had served as Britain's official trade envoy from 2001 to 2011, meaning the government sent him around the world as their representative, giving him access to sensitive, confidential information about British trade deals, diplomatic relationships, private commercial intelligence. The kind of information that is not meant to leave the room. The kind of information that absolutely, under no circumstances, should end up in the hands of a convicted sex offender. And yet, there it was. Emails suggesting that Andrew forwarded official government documents to Epstein, not occasionally, repeatedly, over years. And in one email, the information arrived in Andrew's inbox and was sent directly to Epstein in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. No accident, no mistake. A deliberate action, taking confidential material and passing it straight to a man who had been convicted of soliciting a minor for sex and who, at the time of these communications, had no legitimate business reason in the world to be receiving. British government intelligence. The police investigation opened formally, multiple forces got involved, and then on a cold Thursday morning in February, they showed up. No warning to the palace. The National Police Chiefs Council gave the Home Office just 30 minutes' notice before the arrest happened, and that was described casually as routine practice. Routine for the arrest of a member of the royal family. 30 minutes. Notice to the people who run the institution that Andrew was born into. They did not ask permission. They did not check whether it was convenient. They simply came. And here is the piece of history that puts all of this in context. The last time a member of the British royal family was arrested was in 1649. That was King Charles I. He was later executed for treason. Almost 400 years had passed. Nearly 4 centuries of royal untouchability now ended on a gray Thursday morning in Norfolk. After 11 hours in custody, he was released under investigation. The investigation is not over. Multiple police forces are coordinating. Former members of his close protection unit, the officers who traveled with him, who were present during his Epstein visits, who must have seen things, are being contacted. His former home, Royal Lodge, was searched. Police vehicles were stationed outside Wood Farm. The wheels of justice, for the first time in his life, were turning around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and they were not stopping. Now, before we talk about how the palace responded before we get to Harry and Meghan, we need to talk about Virginia Giuffre, because she is the reason any of this matters. She was the woman who came forward and said that Epstein had trafficked her to Andrew on 3 separate occasions. Twice when she was only 17 years old. She said it publicly, she said it repeatedly, and she spent years fighting through lawsuits, through media storms, through public doubt, through everything that gets thrown at women who accuse powerful men. In 2022, Andrew settled a civil lawsuit she brought against him, paid an undisclosed sum, admitted nothing, kept his freedom. And Virginia Giuffre died in 2025 at the age of 41. She never saw this arrest. She spent her final years fighting, and then she was gone before justice had any chance of catching up to the man she accused. When news of the arrest broke on February 19th, her siblings released a statement. They said their broken hearts had been lifted. They said no one is above the law, not even royalty. And then they said something that will not be forgotten easily. They said he was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, they said Virginia did this for you. He was never a prince. Those 4 words carry everything. The palace's response came quickly. And if you know how to read royal language, it told you everything about where Andrew now stands. King Charles issued a statement saying the law must take its course and that police have his full support and cooperation. No warmth, no mention of his brother by name, no "we are praying for him" or "our family is together." Nothing. Just cold, clinical, carefully worded distance. The institution protecting itself, as it always does, while one of its own sinks. And hours later, Charles and Camilla attended a public event, smiling, business as usual, as if nothing had happened, because for the monarchy to survive, that is, exactly what it has to project, that it is bigger than any one person, that it moves forward regardless, that the machine does not stop for scandal, even this one. But here is what is actually happening behind that composed exterior. The man who is quietly but very clearly taking control of things is not Charles. It is William, the future king. The man who has spent years building an AI image of stability and seriousness is now calling more of the shots within the institution than he ever has before. A royal author who has spent years studying this family said it plainly. William is increasingly the one making decisions. And one of those decisions appears to be even further distancing from the Sussexes. The gap between the Wales household and the Sussex household, already a chasm, is reportedly widening further. Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, have reportedly been told they cannot attend Royal Ascot this year. They are not being charged with anything. They did not do anything wrong. But their father's disgrace has now become their social exile. That is the brutal arithmetic of how the British monarchy manages its reputation. Sentiment comes last. The brand comes first. As for Andrew himself, the picture that is emerging of his daily life right now is almost surreal in its smallness. A royal author described his routine in simple terms. He mostly stays indoors, watches films, shuffles around in his dressing gown in the morning. He cannot play golf anymore. Too visible, too public. He speaks to his lawyers. He has almost no social life. Most of his friends have apparently disappeared. A source with knowledge of the situation put it bluntly. Andrew is effectively under house arrest for the rest of his life, in exchange for his brother funding his comfortable lifestyle. That is the unofficial deal. Charles will pay. Andrew will disappear. He will be moved to Marsh Farm on the Sandringham estate, a smaller property, now being fitted with significant security measures to ensure he has minimal public exposure while the investigation continues. A gilded cage. Comfortable, quiet, and inescapable. But there is another layer to the Andrew story that is darker still, because according to sources close to him, Andrew is not sitting quietly and simply accepting his fate. He is scared, genuinely, deeply scared, because if this investigation leads to charges and conviction, the maximum sentence for misconduct in public office in the United Kingdom is life imprisonment. Life. And a source said bluntly, he says he won't survive if he has to. Do jail time. His lawyers are telling him they can manage it, that it will never reach that point. But Andrew reportedly does not fully believe them. And so, quietly, he is reportedly exploring an escape plan. Not metaphorically, literally. Countries without, extradition treaties with the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Russia. Places where British law cannot reach him. Places where a man with money can simply disappear and never come back. The royal family will not help. Charles will not grant him diplomatic immunity. There is no rescue package coming. He is, for the first time in 66 years of his life, completely on his own. A former prince, the son of Queen Elizabeth, planning to flee to Russia to avoid prison. Read that sentence again, because it is real. Now, across the Atlantic, California, Harry and Meghan. While Andrew's disaster was unfolding, something else was happening that the palace was equally ill-equipped to handle. A brand new book, a fresh attack, and a furious counterattack from the Sussexes that threw gasoline on an already burning situation. A writer named Tom Bower, who previously wrote a deeply critical book about Harry and Meghan back in 2022, has a new one coming out. It is called Betrayal, Power, Deceit, and the Fight for the Future of the Royal Family, and it drops March 26th. But on March 13th, the Times of London started publishing excerpts, and those excerpts were explosive. The most jaw-dropping claim in the serialization was this. Queen Camilla, King Charles's wife, reportedly told a friend that Meghan had brainwashed Harry. Brainwashed. That is not a polite criticism. That is not a gentle expression of concern. That is the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom allegedly telling someone in her private circle that her stepson, a grown man, a war veteran, a father, was so thoroughly manipulated by his wife that he could no longer think for himself. It is a claim that strips Harry of all agency, all intelligence, all independent judgment, and places all blame for everything that happened on Meghan's shoulders. The book goes further. It says William and Catherine saw Meghan not as a new family member to welcome, but as a threat, an intruder, a destabilizing force. From the very beginning, according to this account, the Wales household viewed the Sussex marriage not with warmth, but with suspicion and hostility. The book claims Harry began cutting off his old friends to please Meghan, changed his phone number without telling anyone in his family, became, as the book puts it, possessed by a desire for revenge. that his personality changed entirely. That simple dislikes became passionate hatreds, that the cheerful, easygoing Harry the world had known was replaced by someone unrecognizable, all because of one woman. And then the book also takes aim at the Invictus Games, the sporting competition Harry founded in 2014 for wounded and injured veterans. The excerpts suggest the 2025 Games in Canada became overshadowed by Harry and Meghan's presence, that it turned into more of a celebrity showcase than a genuine tribute to veterans. The Invictus Games Foundation pushed back on this immediately, calling the characterization a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Games are and what they stand for. But the damage of the claim being published, and published widely, was already done. Harry and Meghan's response arrived on March 15th. It was fierce, it was direct, and it was crafted to do one specific thing, not just defend themselves, but destroy the credibility of the entire operation. Their spokesperson said Bauer had long crossed the line from criticism into fixation. They pointed out that he had publicly stated his belief that the monarchy depends on obliterating the Sussexes from public life, and said that language speaks for itself. Then they delivered the line that everyone is going to remember. They said that people interested in facts will look elsewhere, and that those seeking deranged conspiracy and melodrama know exactly where to find him. Deranged conspiracy and melodrama. From a royal spokesperson. About a book that had not even been released yet. It is extraordinary language. The kind of language you only use when you have decided there is nothing left to lose by going full force. And the irony? The book shot to #1 on Amazon's bestseller list before it even hit shelves. Harry and Meghan's furious rebuttal, meant to discredit the book, quite possibly drove thousands of additional people straight to pre-order it. The Sussex machine, usually well-oiled in its media management, may have handed Bauer the best marketing campaign of his career. But step back from the noise for a moment. Because underneath all of this, the book, the statements, the back and forth, there is something real and painful at the center of Harry's experience of this entire moment. The book itself mentioned it in one of its more insightful passages. It said that Andrew's downfall shocked Harry, that he found the whole thing unpredicted and unimagined, and that Harry fears that one day William, as a future king, could remove the Sussex titles entirely and effectively banish Harry from Britain altogether. Think about that. Harry watched his uncle, a man who the palace protected for years, who lived in a 30-room mansion on royal grounds, who was shielded and insulated and handled with kid gloves despite being at the center of one of the most shameful scandals. In modern royal history, he watched that man eventually get arrested anyway. The protection ran out. The palace couldn't save him in the end. Harry served in Afghanistan. He flew combat missions. He founded a competition that has changed the lives of thousands of wounded veterans. He did the job. And when he and Meghan needed support, when Meghan was struggling, when she asked for help, the institution turned away. He lost his security, his housing on royal grounds, his official role, his closeness to his father and brother. Everything that made him part of the family he was born into. He paid the price for simply wanting something different. And Andrew, who did far worse by any measure, was comfortable and cushioned for years longer than he deserved. The unfairness of that comparison does not require any elaboration. It simply sits there, ugly and undeniable, for anyone willing to look at it honestly. So here is where everything stands today, March 16th, 2026. Andrew is in a farmhouse on the Sandringham estate, watching films in his dressing gown, talking to lawyers, abandoned by most of his friends, reportedly terrified of prison and privately exploring options to flee the country. He has not been charged. He has not been cleared. The investigation is active and widening. His daughters cannot attend Royal Ascot. His brother will fund his quiet disappearance in exchange for staying invisible. The police are still working. More may come. The monarchy is running on autopilot, Charles attending engagements, William quietly consolidating power, the institution projecting normality while everything around it burns. Legislation is being considered to finally, formally, remove Andrew from the line of succession, because the absurdity of a man under criminal investigation still technically being eligible for the throne has become impossible to ignore. And Harry and Meghan are in California, preparing for a trip to Australia in April, fighting a book war with a writer who has built his career targeting them, and watching from a distance as the institution that rejected them is forced to reckon, publicly, with the consequences of protecting the wrong people for the wrong reasons for far too long. The monarchy has survived everything before. It survived Diana. It survived abdications and affairs and 100 years of political upheaval. It will tell itself it can survive this too, and maybe it can. Maybe William is steady enough, careful enough, modern enough to steer the ship through these waters. But something has changed. Something that cannot simply be walked back or waited out. The idea, the fundamental centuries-old idea, that the people who live in those palaces are untouchable, that they exist in a different dimension of accountability than the rest of us, that their birth protects them from consequences. That idea took a severe, visible, undeniable blow on February 19, 2026. A man who wore a prince's title his whole life spent his birthday in a police station. A woman who fought for years to be believed died before she could see it. A family that prided itself on dignity and duty is watching its reputation crack, in real time. And a brother in California, thousands of miles away, is watching all of it. Frustrated, perhaps vindicated in ways he cannot say out loud, and very much aware that the institution he was born into is not what it claimed to be. Nobody is above the law, not even royalty. The world just watched that proven. Live in real time, and it will not forget.